Good morning. Well, today we continue to listen to Jesus speak to us in the Gospel of Luke from the Sermon on the Plain. And last week, Jesus asked us to consider doing something that can be very challenging. He asked us to do our best, trying to respond lovingly and act with goodness, not just toward people who love us back, but even our enemies. And certainly in and of itself, it's a challenging teaching. Now, Jesus comes to us in the Sermon on the Plain as a wisdom teacher. And he wants to give us practical advice. And today, we have sort of a series of wisdom teachings. When you think about it, wisdom literature, like the first reading from the book of Sirach, or the Proverbs, or the Sermon on the Mount, or also the Sermon on the Plain, it's sort of like how-to manual. Now, how-to manuals are not the most exciting to read. Would you agree? They can be actually rather boring. But when you look at the pieces inside, you realize that they have some good advice and some good information. And that's what the Sermon on the Mount is. So today, Jesus gives us this series of statements or questions, and they are kind of loosely connected. And most of you actually don't remember what we just read. It was something about splinters, something about fruits, something about, what else was there? It's kind of like a how-to manual, But again, the pieces inside are important. So what we see today in today's gospel is sort of one wisdom statement after another, after another, and after another. And each could be its own homily. Most likely, Jesus did not say all of them at one time. Rather, Jesus probably said those statements at different times, and then Luke took all of them together and he put them in one sermon that we know as Sermon on the Plain. So today Jesus begins with a question. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? Now, the answer to the question is obvious. They will fall into a pit. But now, blindness in the wisdom literature is often a metaphor for human foolishness. Or to put it in another way, a metaphor for someone who lacks wisdom. So in a way, Jesus is challenging us today to ask a simple question. In my life, what is the source of wisdom and knowledge that guides me? Whom do I trust? Where do I go to seek answers to important questions in my life? And people can go to different places. Facebook, news media, books, friends, people in my life. Now, Deacon Chris talked about influencers a couple of weeks ago. And again, influencers are people who shape our lives in one form or another, who influence the way we think, the way we speak, the way we act. And each one of us is influenced all the time. It is impossible to live in the influence-free space. We are all affected by what others say, by the ideas of others, the ways other people think, especially in these times of internet and social media. We are influenced constantly. So the question is, who is the source of wisdom in my life? Now, for a follower of Christ, for a Christian, the answer is rather straightforward. That for us, the source of wisdom is Jesus. He is the teacher. Now, if that is the case, we want to focus on one particular teaching, a statement, a piece of wisdom in this how-to manual that we have today. And this is what Jesus says to us today. Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me remove the splinter in your eye," when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? You hypocrite, remove the wooden beam from your eye first. Then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. Now again, this is a challenging teaching on some level. And what Jesus is saying to us is this: before you criticize others, first look at yourself. And that is not easy. Before you criticize others, first look at your own self. And that can be rather challenging. But notice that wisdom will always invite us to look at ourselves first. And the truth of the matter is that that is probably the best thing we can do, even though it is not that easy. Because sometimes we cannot resist. When somebody says to you, "Well, go and first look at the mirror," most often we don't respond, "That's a great advice, let me go." We tend to resist. But I would suggest this, that knowing yourself in truth, self-knowledge, is more important than anything else. It is the greatest gift I can give to myself, and self-knowledge and self-understanding is the greatest gift I can give to others. To know my strengths and to know my weaknesses, to know the beams in my life. And we all have them. We all have the beams at different points. But we also have the ability to remove them. Now, and the wooden beam in one particular situation can be anger. A wooden beam in one particular situation may be judgment, or pride, or arrogance, or self-interest. In another situation, the wooden beam is a wounded ego, and so on and so forth. And if I am willing to recognize the beam, if I am willing to admit, okay, the beam exists, yeah, it's there, and remove the beam, We will find wisdom, and I will find wisdom to remove the splinter from the other person's eye. So that is the teaching. That's what Jesus says to us today as a wisdom teacher. A simple, practical advice in this how-to manual that we have in the Sermon on the Plain. He wants to influence the way we think and the way we act. Now the question is he right or is he wrong?